Yeah, alright, I see we have some spammers in the chat. So I don't know what to do with that, if I should like just ban or whatever. Whatever. Alright, let's try running this again. Let's see if we can make it work. Or make it fail. We detected replay tab running. Alright, I need to... Oops. I will get back to the team with this. Because it's kind of weird. Because if I run the Electron browser normally, and then go back to the replay browser, it seems to be working. Maybe it was just coincidence. So let's try if this is going to work. Running. All right, seems we are running. Let's see if we have a failing test. Please, let's just have a failing test. It's all passing, come on. Okay. Let's just see if what happens if I just kill it. Try again. I cannot be talking about flaky tests if everything is passing. Ah, great. 5 passing tests again. Is Cypress really that reliable? I mean, it probably is, but this branch was designed to have flaky tests, so what's going on here? Okay, let's just find that flake one. Let's just run this one. Or we can run this one also. So that we have some flaky tests, hopefully, that we can actually open. Okay, I don't know. I guess I ran out of luck today. At least, you know, this is live, right? No, I don't think Cypress is blocking anyone. Well, not anyone, not replay at least. I think it might be just some kind of issue that, like last time when I tried to run tests on the live stream and something didn't work, there was like this weird conflict between the server that is being like spun up by Cypress. There's some like things going on in the back end, like this local host, whatever, and there was some conflict, like Cypress and Replay were using the same port, and that caused some trouble. Like I couldn't visit the application, although the application was clearly running. If I opened it in browser, it would work. If I opened it in Cypress, then it would not work. So we found that issue. We fixed that issue. The team is great. Like really, if I find anything, then it is going to. They're going to just fix it right away. It's been awesome working with Replay. All right, we got a flaky test finally. All right. So let's hope we can actually open it. Maybe I should just have filtered out this one because it's already like flagged as flaky. But yeah, I'm glad we have something. So hopefully we can actually take that recording. It is shorter. It's not 1 minute. It's just 19 seconds. So hopefully we don't. I'm still going to refresh this. Maybe it doesn't make sense to do that, but maybe we'll be lucky and we'll actually be open to able to open that recording, which would be great because we have lots of flaky tests in this recording. In the meantime, let's hope this one will work. And then we'll jump into debugging. All right, 38%. Here we have 55%. I think actually after each refresh, it jumps a little higher. So maybe it's just like something timing out on the back end. But we'll see. Hey, here's something happening here. All right, great. Sweet, I'm glad we got to this. Because I really wanted to show you this in today's stream. All right, so now we have all of our tests that we have ran, right? So we have the transaction feed. This is the describe block with all of the passing tests, and this is the flaky test that we already know it's flaky because it has the flake name in it. So what I can do now, I can just play this like a video, right? This is nothing new, right? So if you record a video with Cypress, you will pretty much have the same experience, right? You can look into what was happening, especially having video from like the failed test. That's valuable, right? So we see that the last thing, like at the very end, that was what was failing. Now I can scroll back to any time and it goes pretty smoothly, so that's great. But let's just click on this failed attempt. So here we have the test that eventually passed, but it had one failed attempt, right? So by default we see it as, all right, this has passed. But it did fail and we retried and then it passed. So let's take a look at the failed test. And in here we got all of the Cypress commands and all of the XHR communication. So that's great. We can see everything happening, all of the commands. And what I like to do whenever I'm facing a failing test or a flaky test is to sort of show side by side the passed attempt and the failed attempt. So I actually like to work with two tabs in my window, right? So I go open the failed tab and open the passed tab. Wait, do I have to? Okay, I just like open it in the new tab. Hey, look, this has done processing, so we can actually take a look into that. All right, I'll do that after. Let's just focus on this flake test right now. Great, so I have let's open the passing test here and let's open the failing test over here, right? So these two attempts we have, right? We can see them in this viewer, we can play them like a video, and if you look at the timeline over here, we can see that parts are unloaded and then we have this full line, like this not dotted the line, the solid line here. So that's just like the part of the recording that we are focusing on right now in this past test. And in this fail test, you can see that it is this part, right? So if I switch between them, you can see that those are like different parts of the recording focused. Now, as I said, like this is sort of similar to what we would have in Cypress UI. So we can see, we can go to every command and take a look at what was happening. At every point of time, we can see the failing assertion. And what I like to do is to take a look at the passing test, take a look at the failing test, and see what was different. So here we have the data test transaction item. We are not able to find that element. I think this is a little bit scrambled, but that's okay for now. As I mentioned, like these things are being improved by the day, and this is one of the issues that can sometimes happen, that don't have these things in order. That doesn't really stop us, and I'm going to show you why in a minute, right? So we have this get data test transaction item. Let's go ahead and find that in in the passing test as well. Here we have get data test transaction item, and now what I like to do is like to get an understanding what's actually happening before the test, or what is actually the intention of this test. Now looking at this, right, if I open the viewer, I can see that there are like 10 items. By the way, it's interesting that we see them sort of in this loading state. What happens if I EQ3? That will find an element, but we still cannot see it. Like, it seems like there's this overlay or whatever. Skeleton element, is that what we're looking at? It is a little weird though that we just see this. Yeah, whatever. All right, let's go with the data test transaction item. Right, so here this test will actually find 10 elements. We can jump to the test source, and in the test source I can see that this is the Cypress command, get element selector like. So we're using a custom command, and this is the definition of that custom command. So that's why when we go to the test source, we're taking right to the custom command that is being used in this test, right? Let's take a look at the failing test. Here we actually find 0 elements. So I think the test will, expect it to find element, but never found it. Right, so here we see a blank screen. In the past test, we don't see a blank screen. We see everything that's over here, right? So what's happening here? It's honestly, it seems like a backend issue. I believe that comment mentioned something like that, right? We seem to have a issue where those items just like don't load at all. And backend issues honestly are like not that hard to debug, right? Because if you know what's loading this, like what API call is being made when we are loading those elements, then just take a look at we can take a look at the network panel and see what's going on here, right? So we have this get data. So let's scroll up and see what's actually happening. What kind of API calls are being made when we open the application? So we are selecting transaction items. So we should be we have the data test items, data test selectors, and they say transaction items. So I guess this is list of transaction items. So if I go up and try to see what are the API calls being made, we can see that there's transaction public. That's a really good naming. It's probably the one that I'm looking for, but let's see. I'll click on this. As I do that, in the network panel, I can work with this just like with DevTools in a browser, right? I have all of the network communication, headers, response, stack trace, everything. Plus I have a bunch of other information like console elements, React panel. We can actually search React elements in here. I'm going to show that in a minute. But yeah, let's take a look at the network. And I thought, yeah, let's go with transaction. All right, we got a bunch of stuff. Transaction machine, transaction whatever. I think these are just like when you're working on a local host. Yeah, no, those are TSX files, so they're taking from cache. We have this API call, public. Oh, that's it, right? Transactions public. Here we go. Here we have it. Yo, Vish, how are you? All right, so let's do headers, response, stack trace timing. All right, so when we take a look at the response, we see that there's page data, we got limit, has next pages, total pages, and we got some results. Let's try to see this exact API call, this transaction public. Can I find it like this? Transactions public, yeah, all right. Transactions public. So I'm going back to the failed test, open the DevTools, go to the network panel. Let's just collapse this. I don't need it right now. Filter it out. Let's jump to this moment. And let's see what we got as a response. All right, we got results. And it seems like we got some results on here. So this is probably not the issue. It doesn't seem like that. That's interesting. I would think, yeah, I would assume that if we have elements loaded in the passing test and not loaded in the failing test, then the problem would be in the backend. It's clearly not. So that's great. I'm actually excited about that. So I like to call, I believe this is called red herring. Like when you are searching for something, you feel like you have a clue, and then you find out that that was not what you not the right track. You were not on the right track, but you actually got distracted by something else. Then so yeah, so that's what we are experiencing here, and I'm excited about that because now we got to dig a little bit deeper. All right, so it seems like this is not an issue. So let's go back to that get command in the passing test right now, right? Because I want to find out what I want to see now is like, all right, if we get those transaction items, there is 10 of them, right? We can take a look at the details. Here's like this details panel, and it's the exact same thing as you would have in your Cypress test, right? Oh, okay. Right, so whenever you have a command, by the way, if you're writing Cypress tests, I hope you are doing this, but I have seen people actually not doing it, and it's honestly, it's awful. So every time you click on a command, it will print out information in your browser console, right? So if you're not using console, which when you are writing Cypress tests, it's like you're not using 80% of the power. I think the reason why I personally really like the experience that you have in Cypress is that you're in the browser and you have all of the DevTools available for you. And Cypress actually utilizes those DevTools in a really nice way. So if you click on a command, then you will get the details of that command. In Replay, we have this details panel. So you would get all of the information about what the command did, right? So if we have a get command, like we have here, we're going to get like the details of what was the command. We got the properties of what we passed into the command. And then there's this yielded parameter, basically saying, well, this is what the command has found. This is what the command has returned. So when we have this yielded in a get command, what we're going to get is the list of all of the elements that were returned, that the get command has found. And here in Replay, as I mentioned, this is like DevTools. Well, this is DevTools, right? We have connected these two worlds. So if you click on this little icon, this target icon over here, this will open Elements panel and actually take you to the element, to that item that's rendered at this point of the test execution. So as things are appearing, disappearing, etc., you can go right to that point where that get command has found an element, and they then take a look at which element it was. So right now, what I'm looking at here in the elements panel is the element that the get command has found. Well, one of the 10 elements, right? So I mentioned there's also a React panel. So here, instead of like the DOM tree, what we have in the elements panel, here we have the React components panel. So if you ever worked with React, you are familiar with this, but if you haven't, basically with React you have different kinds of components, and each component can have like a div inside it, and can be a button. It has a representation or part of this DOM tree inside, so you can sort of create like a Lego blocks for yourself that you can combine, etc. Besides being a bunch of elements in it, HTML elements, there's the functionality that makes React, right? So what we can look at both in this, and we can take a look at the elements panel, look at the DOM tree, or we can look at the React panel and actually see the details of that React component. So we have this list item over here. I see that there's a data transaction item dash something here. So that's nice information. Let's see if I can see that in the DOM tree, in the React tree. There are two icons that looks very similar. Like this one, you might be familiar with from browser DevTools. You can take an element and just go ahead and select whichever element you want. But we have the same thing under the React panel. So we can actually go click on this icon right below and then find any React component. So when I click on something, let's just try to find something like this. It will take me to that React component. Now I'm going to climb up that tree a little bit and try to see if I can find something. List item. This sounds like the thing we are searching for. Yeah, it is exactly the thing I'm searching for. Because here on this right panel, we have all of the properties of that React component, right? So I have, properties, on-click, children, whatever. We have the data test property. That's the important one. Because we have transaction item dash and then like the ID of that item. So that's great. What I want here, hey, where's my icon? There was supposed to be an icon here that that should have shown me the, like I can go to the code. Oh, okay, it was one level above transaction item. That is actually the component. So here I can go and jump to definition, and this will take me to the definition of this transaction item component. All right, so this might give us some information, right? What we are looking at right now is we have a failing test that will show no items whatsoever, and then we have a passing test that will show us the elements. So now what I'm trying to find is I have searched for the component that is supposed to be rendering those items and try to see like what's different. Try to see what's actually happening. So when I look at this transaction item component, I can see that in this gutter element over here, I can see that this was rendered 10 times. The line of code that we're looking at here was ran 10 times, which makes sense because in the passing test, we actually see 10 elements. It's actually kind of interesting that it is really number 10 in here. Let's try to see and open that transaction item component in the failing test. Now, the way I can do that, I actually have the whole source explorer here, right? So I can go ahead and try to find that element, but also I can type Command P and look for that transaction what was it called? Transaction item. Maybe if I don't make a typo, it will do a better job of searching. Yeah, here we go. All right. Okay, that's interesting. So we can now see that if we compare these two, let's go to line 63. You can see that there's a difference. We have, this was ran 10 times. This was not running 10 times. All right, so this basically confirms what we see, right? We see 10 elements over here, and we see 0 elements over here, right? So maybe we need to climb a little bit higher up the React component tree and try to see what's actually rendering those elements. We'll try to see this list over here. Transaction infinite list. This seems like it could be good. Oh, we got transactions 10, right? So here we have a property transaction, and this is actually showing us those elements. Okay, good. Let's take a look at the definition. So we get transaction, infinite list. There we have like load more items, which probably load more items if we have more than 10 or more than some number. And then we have transactions length. All right, transaction get. Let's see. Use styles, item count. Item count. This could be interesting. Let's take a look. Item count. I'm going to add a print statement. Now what I need to do is add a print statement below this. So let's do item count. And this acts like a console log, right? So it's like if I took this code, this TSX file in my VS Code or whatever, and typed in console log item count, right? But I don't need to make that change. I just have it here in my recording. So this has already happened, but I'm adding a console log after it already happened. So let's add this, and in my console it's going to appear. So we got 11 items in here. Let's compare that to the failed test. Let's go to the file, transaction, item, items. Forgot the name again. Transaction infinite list. Okay, transaction infinite list. Here we go. That was line 38. So let's go line 38. Oh, this actually didn't even run. We don't see any number in the gutter. Okay, so I need to understand this logic a little bit more. Transaction infinite list. How is this not even being used? That's interesting. Maybe we need to climb even higher. So we got the transaction infinite list, and that's a component, right? So what I can do now, let's try to see where this component is being used. I'm going to search, and I'm just going to type it like the name of the component and try to search where that is being used. Transaction list. Oh, okay, so transaction infinite list is actually a child, is being as a child used as a child component in this transactional list. And we have the transactions, loading page, pagination, whatever. So this is our failing test. Let's take a look at the transaction list component in the passing test as well. Transaction list. All right, so this looks fairly similar, actually. This might be our clue. So let's see what this actually is. So we have this paper component. Then we have a subheader. All right. Show skeleton, skeleton list, transactions length. Oh, all right. This is interesting. This is something that could lead us somewhere, right? So here's a condition. If transactions has a length greater than 0, then render out the transaction infinite list, right? And here we see that this was not ran. So we have the condition over here. And if that condition is true, we should run this piece of code. We should run this component and render it out. And this is our failed test where we see that nothing's being rendered, right? In the passing test, right, we have the same condition, but we have this line number 1 over here. So we do render this. So this is a difference between the passing and failing test. And we have this show empty list. Show empty list and whatever. So this is also some sort of condition. Show empty list. I actually don't understand what's going on here. Create a transaction. Let's just focus on this. So we see that the transactions length is something. So where's transactions being defined? I just copy the name of this and hit Command F, and I can now search within this file. So let's do transactions. Oh, it's actually a property in the transaction list. So that's being passed into this component. Okay. But let's actually log it out. Let's add a print statement. Let's do transactions, and I'm going to give it a green color here. Let's do this. Open console. Oh, okay. So we have an empty array here. Let's do the same in the passing test. Let's just go ahead. Add a green color. Confirm. Oh, it's an empty array here as well. That is surprising. Because I thought I understood this logic. I thought that... Wait, am I on the same line? Yeah, I am. If the transaction length is larger than 0, then render this transaction infinite list. And we see that we're just not loading that, right? It's not happening. When I do it here, it does load this element. So this transaction's length should be bigger than 0, but we are seeing empty array. Huh. That's interesting. Like, what's actually... I'm probably not reading this right. I thought this was our clue. But also, like, how does this even work? If we have an empty array here. If this is true, if transactions length is larger than 0, then we should render this component. So this should be true because it seems like we do render it, like we run it. And in the failing test, it seems like we're not running that, we're not finding that component, but it seems like those transactions are the same no matter what. Let me just remove these extra logs so we see only the thing we are interested in. Okay, let's keep on digging. Transactions length. It's still weird. Like, why? Yeah, maybe I'm just like not reading it right. Maybe there's something that I'm missing here. Okay. Okay, let's take a look. I guess I'll go back to the React panel now. Try to find the transaction list. Transaction list. Here we go. Let's try to see if I can find any. Oh, here we have transactions. And we have them over here. Oh, okay, this is interesting. Transaction list. Here, if we take a look at the props, we also have 10 elements. Okay. Interesting. And I am trying to render those transactions, like print out the value of them in here. Where else do we transactions? We have it here, over here, over here, over here. Transaction item. Show empty list. Okay, let's see. I don't know. Let's see what this show empty list will return. Show empty list. Grammarly can go away right now. True, false, true, false. All right. Let's just go with here. Show empty list. True, false, 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 false. And we have true, false, 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 true. Oh, interesting. So we have another thing going on here. So if I go to this last true statement, it will say show empty list. If I go over here, well, visually it looks the same, but there is something happening here that will make this show empty list variable change. Like in React, you can have a component and it's being rendered like a bunch of times, especially if you're in local development. There's this use effect and all kind of things, weird things going on that can make the component render a bunch of times. But there is a difference, right? So we have true, false, 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 false in the passing test. And then we have true, false, 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 true in the failing test. So another difference, right? I don't know what that is. What is the number 11? Oh yeah, the number 11, I added a print statement in some other file. So we have this transaction infinite list. And I have this item count. So basically I'm just like climbing up the React component tree and try to find like what is the thing that has made a difference. It's actually interesting because sometimes like when you debug a flaky test, many times it's flakiness can come from many different sources, right? But many times I find a problem that's simply you click on an element and then nothing happens. And the really nice thing, if you have that kind of problem and you record it with replay, is that whenever you have like a click action, there's this button. We actually don't have any actions here. Interesting. But there's this like blue pill icon in here and it says jump to code, and it will take you like directly to the part of code that's being executed as you click or type or do whatever kind of action. But we don't have that here. We just see data either being rendered or not. By the way, that rendering, it actually bothers me because in the passing test we still don't see the text. Like I don't know what's happening there. Let me just for a second try to go to the Cypress open mode and see if this test is actually like doing something. Wait, let's delete this only. Not if it's doing something, sorry. Whether it is showing those items. Because I'm really curious about... I feel like maybe that could also give us a clue. Transaction... What's the test called? Transaction feeds spec. Transaction feeds. Let's run this. Oh, okay, this is the failing case. Let's rerun this. Ironically, I'm on the passing test right now. Oh, okay, it does render eventually. I find it a little bit weird that when I'm in this passing test, I don't see those items being rendered. I mean, lots of weird stuff happens in when you are on CI. The test is running. Oh, we got it. We actually have it. Okay, good. Here. If I scroll back in this timeline long enough, it will actually show those items. All right. This was a little bit suspicious to me. I thought even the passing test was kind of weird. So yeah. Okay, let's continue on searching. So we got the transaction list. We have the transactions being passed here. There is some kind of logic. So I think I'm going to go one level higher and try to see if we have anything that's there. All right, so let's search for transaction list. Let's go ahead and search transaction list. Okay, that's being used in a bunch of places, but this is kind of a nice thing in our search. So if something is grayed out, it's actually not, it actually hasn't ran. But if it's in full color, then you know that that item actually has ran. So I think that's really cool. All right, so we have the transaction list in here. Is loading, current match is loading. Use effect. If window Cypress. Window public transaction service equals to public transaction service. Results. All right, we have some results here. That could be interesting. Current context. All right, let's open, the transaction public. Transaction public. Transaction public. Yeah, transaction public list. All right, so here, as we call this transaction list, we got a property, results. So let's print out this results here. Results. Let's give it a orange color so we can see that. Okay, we got empty arrays in the failing test. Let's go ahead and try to see this in the passing test. Wait. Results. Results. And give it an orange color. Confirm. Oh, interesting. Okay. We got something. So as I mentioned, we have like a couple of executions here, right? If I rewind to this moment, right? When the results actually had some length in here. In the failing test, we have the results. They are always empty, but let's jump to the same point. Like we have 5 executions of this line of code. In the both tests, we're going to the last execution because that's where the difference is, right? We have the test. We have the data over here. We're missing that data over here. So let's now. I'm going to remove this other print statement. I should have just hidden it. Never mind. Let's just remove it. Now let's go back to the transaction public list. All right. So now what we have here is that we have these results, and those were different in the passing test and in the failing test. So let's take a look at where these results are being made. All right, so we have the current context. This is some kind of object where we have those results. We destructure the results from this current context. I don't know what that current context is, other than if I hover over, I can see the whole object, right? So I can see that data layer. By the way, if you are watching this and you haven't seen replay in the past, isn't it just like so cool? Because I absolutely love it that you can go this deep in something that has already happened, and especially if it's a flaky test. Like, imagine you have a like normal reporter, right? And we've established that this is not a network problem. We looked at the network layer, it was pretty much the same. So something's wrong in the front end, in the application layer of what's happening here, right? Like you have to debug this manually, locally, try to recreate the bug, which might be close to impossible because this might be running on CI, there's some timing issue, whatever. I would never be able to find it without this tool. So I think it's pretty cool. I know I'm sort of tooting my own horn, so to speak. Well, not my own. I mean, I have, like, I don't want to say I have nothing to do this, but the tool that we are using here is built by just like awesome superstar engineers that I have the privilege to call my colleagues, which is awesome. And I'm just trying to tell the world how cool it is. So yeah, I got a little bit carried away, but come on. All right. So let's take a look at this current context. What is this current? Oh, use machine public transactions machine. Right, so we have some machine here. What is this machine? What is it doing? Why does it show the current? What's the current? Use machine. Use machine X state react. Okay. All I know that when we look at the current context in the failing test, we got the results being empty, and if we take the current context in the passing test, we have those results. So it seems like this machine is doing something we don't want, or maybe we want because we are we are in the Cypress real world application project, and there's something wrong, something flaky. We're in the flake demo branch, so this might be very intentional, but it's still kind of interesting to see what's going on here. So let's public transactions machine, public transaction service, transaction list, port, public transaction machines. Okay, this is like the public transaction machine. That's what we see here. Let's try to see. Let's try to open that file. Okay, here we go. Okay. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. We found it. All right, so this is the machine that produces our flake. I love this. Okay. Public transaction machines obviously is using some kind of package service, whatever, I don't know. But here we have, in order to introduce flake, sometimes we'll throw an error which represents a potential source of flake when modifying real data. So if math round math random throw error, return a response data. What's response? A response await HTTP client get backend port transaction public params is empty payload undefined. If not empty, it will give us a payload, and that payload comes from yeah, it's a service that will like fetch data, right? And what we'll get back is either a payload, and after we get that data, we are returning that over here, right? But sometimes we just randomly introduce an error. And I think that's interesting because, oh yeah, okay, so like this is all happening in the front end. This has nothing to do with backend. We actually get data from the backend. We call this API. There are some parameters. Oh, the parameter is like a query parameter. Yeah, okay. But we get a response and then we return the response data. Unless we just randomly throw an error. And when we do, then we don't get data back, we just get an error. Throw new error flake. Interesting that we don't see this, by the way. Like, I would expect that to be visible in the console. Doesn't it work like that? When you throw a error, doesn't it show somewhere in the console? I mean, maybe we could find something in the code that will just like suppress the visibility of this error. But yeah, let's just confirm this, right? So if we just generate a random number and then we round it, so we get either, I guess, 1 or 0, or maybe we could get whatever. Let's just take a look at what this actually is. We got a number 1, so we do throw an error. Yeah, number 1 would be, and if we throw it over here, we got number 0, so we don't get a error, and therefore our test is passing. This is lovely. Yeah, I'm so in love with this. Like, I like this actually. Like, this is how you create an example, right? You need to like screw up something in somewhere in order to introduce that error. Because realistically, if you like, realistic errors would not look like this. Like, unless you, I don't know, like viciously fired some developer from your team and they introduce something like this, then you're not going to find something like that in production code. But if you need to create an example, like adding some sort of randomness so that the test is flaky is the way to go. So I like this. It's sort of elegant. I've built something similar in the past where you just have like your backend respond in different times, right? Sometimes it will answer in 10 milliseconds, sometimes it will answer in 1 second, and that can create a race condition of some sort. And it's funny. It's just like funny to me. It was funny to me when I found it. Like, hey, let's just have a random thing in here that will introduce the flake. So to recap, right? We have a Cypress test. It will open a page and then it expects to find a list of elements, list of items, something like this, right? That's all there is to this test. Like, I believe it seeds the database. But then we open the front end, API call is being made, the response will come back, and then the front end will render the data out, right? But for the purposes of the flakiness of the test, Cypress team has introduced a random thing that will just randomly throw an error. So instead of getting that data from the backend and rendering them out, it will just like not render them at all and act as if nothing came back. And that what will create that flakiness, because our test is deterministic and it's trying to find those 10 elements in here. They're not there, so that's where we fail. Lovely. By the way, if you... Oh, never mind. Okay. So let's Let's refresh this one, the one that had problem with processing. It's now on, so eventually it did process. I think it was just like too long and something timeout in the backend, but now we are good, right? So in here we have a bunch of passing tests and one failing. I want to take a look at the failing test. Do I? Or should I rather take a look at the flaky ones? So this one we have already fixed. Let's take a look at the failing test. Maybe we can see what's going on. Oh yeah, that was the too many elements found. We have found 10, expected 0. Let's try to take a look. Transaction item, found 10 elements, expected 0. All right, so let's get some context. I think this is going to be a fun one. I see in the viewer over here that there is some amount range. We have a filter here and we select a range and then we want to see some number of items, right? And that number of items apparently should be 0, but instead we got 10. Oh, all right. So in the beginning I said that making an assertion that there should be 0 elements almost sounds like a what's it called, like a negative assertion, which can be a little bit tricky. But here it's actually not a negative assertion, so I jumped into assumption that it might be. But as I see the test now, if I understand what this test is trying to do, then it is not a negative assertion, right? Because we have a filter and we change that filter range, and as we change that, we're expecting that before we had 10 elements or some elements, and now we're expecting that there will be none because all of those elements, all of those items are out of the range. So I guess this makes sense now, this assertion. So let's just try to confirm that this is what the test is actually trying to do. So we should have a length of 10, but we got length of 0, but we got 10. This is the get transaction item. We already know this item. Wait for public transaction. So there. Oh, okay. So there is an API call here. And where do we look how semi-transparent this is? This is interesting because this can also lead to trouble if you have elements that are not fully visible. Range, on change, invoke change, React component. Can I jump to test source? This will again take me to the commands. I would like to see. Seems like everything is a custom command here. Oh, we got a click element. Oh, yeah, let me show you this. Look, whenever we have a click, some kind of interaction, we have this click and we can jump to code. So when I do this, it will take me, look, to the transaction list amount range filter TSX file, and it will take me to that function that was called as the test, as the Cypress test clicked on some element in the application, right? So that click happened and this function was called. Sometimes that is really, really useful. Right now, I'm not so sure. Maybe it's, I think it can be useful, but we'll see. I mean, it has taken us to the component that's probably that's the component we probably want to examine as our test was failing. But we'll see. All right, so let's try to see what this test is doing. Localhost, open, then whatever transactions public. Yeah, I think what we are trying to do here is set in, yeah, okay. So I clicked on this get by selector and we have this transaction list filter amount range button. So I believe that's what's like is responsible for that range. I don't know. But yeah, we have this here. And if I click on this set amount range, we got 550 and 1000. So it's a custom command. Let's try to find that custom command. Commands, here we go. Set transaction amount range, min, max, right? And we select by element, scroll into view, click, force through, come on. And then we return get like filter react component. It's memoized props on change null invoke. Huh, interesting. So it seems like, just like from the naming of this, it seems like what's being done here is that in the test we take the range element, which we actually cannot see here, and then we just like invoke a certain value on it. Wait, where did my... Yeah, we take the react component. I wonder what this react component command is, but it's probably just taking a certain react component and trying to like directly inject some kind of properties. So instead of taking that range and clicking on it and trying to set a certain range, they just directly access that and invoke, like add a certain properties in there, which is interesting. Let's try to find that component. So it has selector filter amount range slider. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to search for that in all of the files. And here we go. Amount range filter. Yeah, that's where we were with that click function, by the way. So it was relevant, right? So here we have a slider. All right, so let's try to find the slider element. Oh wait, where's the slider from? Is that some kind of... We have the import slider from material UI. All right, so this is like a material UI component. Not sure if we can find it. We have the value, min, max. What was the memoized props? Range area. So this is like, yeah, not React, material design component that comes from a library, and Cypress team is using that in the application, and in the application we just invoke that, yeah, and do something with that. Interesting approach. However, it's probably like not going to tell us too much about where the problem is. Maybe, I don't know. I want to go back to the test. In the test, this is before each. Where do we have our test? Here it is. Does not show feed name transactions. We set the transaction amount range, blah, blah, blah. And then we wait for feed root alias. I think in the Cypress panel, we actually can see what that is. Oh, by the way, let me show you, because we could probably find that over here, right? See the feed root alias. Let's just add a print statement here. Feed root alias. Let's give it a green color. Cypress is green. Public transactions, right? So this is also nice. If you have a test and you have some variables in there, which can often happen, right? But in the test definition, you might not always know. You can print this out. I mean, this thing we can see in the Cypress panel, so that's like not magic here, but still is nice. All right, but let's take a look. So we set the transaction. There's this API call, right? We wait for something to happen. Wait public transactions. Oh wait, that's before we set range. Public transactions. I think there was another wait here. Yeah, public transactions over here. And we have the transactions public. Oh, it's the same API call. It's the same API call, right? So there's not going to be any difference between yeah. Now that we know what the problem is, it's kind of underwhelming. Yeah, I mean, this is the same API call, transactions public, that's either going to give you a proper response or it's just going to fail, right? What was the machine called? There was like a public transaction, personal, public transactions machine, that's it, right? Yeah, so now we can pretty much confirm that the failing test, we see that, oh wait, we see that the response data has come, but we also see that, oh yeah, okay, so this was called 2 times. We have 2 API calls. In the first call, yeah, in one of the calls that we had, this has errored, and in the other one it has worked. So I guess initially when we open the test and we load the data, that's going to work. But as we select the range, another API call is being made, I guess with some different parameters. Maybe, let's see. Oh yeah, we have some different parameters, amount min, amount max. And we're going to get a real response, that works, but basically we're just going to throw it all away because we've introduced flakiness in here. So that's it. All right, so I mentioned in the beginning that when we focus on a single test, we see that this line, this sort of video player line, has a dotted section and then a solid section. Whenever I go to a Cypress panel and I take a look at any one of these tests, we're going to get like a focused view on just that test. But I can go out of the test, right? So I was in this failed attempt 3, but I can go out of this test and now I get a wider view. You can see now the bigger portion of the timeline is solid. So what I want to do now is to take a look in this widened view. I want to take a look at this math random error. It has been called 35 times. And I just want to see like how many times we had the math random error. I think we can I'm actually wondering if I write it like this, if that makes sense. If I'm not calling this, I'm just taking the value that's been, yeah, I'm just taking the value that's been here at the point of execution. So we can see like this is, the machine is just randomly throwing ones and zeros, 1 being true, 0 being false. And just randomly throwing problems into our tests. It is interesting though that we have like 35 executions and only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 failed tests. I wonder like how many times this actually throws an error and the test just passes. We can take a look into that. I can add a conditional and just say that if this, wait, no. I can just add a something here. This API call failed. And now I can sort of jump back and forth and try to see, and I can see every test execution where that failure machine has made the test fail. Although I don't think I can go ahead and, yeah, what I wanted to see, like which test we were in. Oh wait, I probably can see that. API call failed in test. And then I can go Cypress. Current test. And I believe there's a title. Yeah. Let's take a look into the console. API call has failed in test. Filters public transaction. Paginates public transaction feed. So in this test, that has actually passed. We actually get 2 failures. But we don't, we get 2 failures. But the test will still pass. Which is interesting because it does point to a problem that end-to-end tests can have, and that's that sometimes you might get a false positive, or you might get a problem that doesn't manifest in tests, at least not in the test run that you are making, but maybe there is something that's causing trouble for real users. But your tests don't discover that because they're sort of immune for that, right? Because we have a bunch of tests here. Most of them are passing. Just a couple of flaky tests, 1 failing test, and yet 17 of those 35 API calls actually didn't work well. Like those API call. Well, it's not the fault of the backend, it's the fault of the front end, but still, there is an error and it's not being detected by tests. I think that speaks a lot about the test design that's being done here. Well, this is intentional, right? This is intentionally showing the flakiness, but what I'm trying to say is that it also accidentally shows another problem. That can happen with tests, and that's the test flakiness that we that's the false positives that we have here. All right, let me check chat here, because this is, I see a lot of things happening in the chat, not in the chat, but in my stream. I'm wondering if everything is all right. Let me just check that real quick. Yeah, all right. Hopefully you're fine. This is not like the most interactive stream right now, but we'll see. Anyways, I'm still recording this. I still have I have a recording of this. So if I've seen someone say on LinkedIn, well, LinkedIn has been notoriously bad with their live streams. I've seen someone mention that they have some sort of lagging in there, so maybe that's a fail for today. But at least you can find all of this in the YouTube channel. Hopefully that works well. We'll see. Maybe not. If anything, we still have the local thing, so I'm going to upload it. I think this is pretty cool. I wonder, I wonder though, if all of the flakiness in this test flake demo was actually caused by this API call. It looks like maybe not, because we have notifications, new transaction. Oh, we have problem flakiness in the authentication. So maybe there's something that's problematic. Yeah, this will be fun to look at later. But I've been going on for an hour and a half, so I think it makes sense to wrap this up for today. So yeah, thank you very much for coming today, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you had a good signal throughout the stream. If not, I apologize. But yeah, if at any point you are interested in checking out replay, that would be really cool. If you're not sure about this, then feel free to reach out. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter. Feel free to chat with me. I'll be happy to help. So yeah, thanks very much, everybody. See you next time.